Let me start this video out by trying to be the voice of reason, because big tech, and particularly Facebook in this instance, are not the voice of reason. In fact, MCrider is a really small fish in a huge ocean, and I'm swimming in Facebook's ocean and big tech's ocean a lot of the time because of the career path I've chosen with MCrider. But MCrider is currently limited distribution on Facebook because third-party fact checkers have deemed that MCrider releases misleading information. Since I'm being the voice of reason, let me say first off that if I had to bet money on this, I would think it was probably a mistake. I don't post controversial material on social media platforms, personal or especially through pages that are my means of supporting my family, and MCrider is how I support my family. I do post an occasional video expressing my faith as a Christian, but we'll talk about that more in just a minute. I don't talk about politics on MCrider. I don't talk about masks or not wearing masks on MCrider. I don't talk about left or right issues or any other hot button topics of the day. I talk about motorcycle skills and road strategy to help you become a better rider. So I was surprised when I went to the MCrider Facebook page yesterday to post a link to this week's MCrider video. And I was greeted with this message. So let me bring it up on screen and I'll read it along with you. So it says, this page isn't allowed to advertise because it has repeatedly posted content that has been debunked by third-party checkers. This behavior means the page hasn't complied with our misinformation and advertising policy, which is a requirement for advertising on Facebook. Its ads have been disabled, and you currently cannot create or run new ads. Well, I thought, that's odd. What would possibly be posted on MCrider that they thought would be misleading? So I clicked on that blue button to the right to find the answer. So when you click on Review the Ratings, what they tell me is, your page has reduced distribution and other restrictions because of repeated sharing of false news. People will also be able to see if a page has a history of sharing false news. Okay, so now it's starting to get a little more personal. Not only is Facebook saying that I can't advertise on their platform, now they're actively telling people who come to my page that MCrider has a history of sharing false news. Not only are they saying I can't promote my training materials, but they're actively discrediting my good name to my followers. Again, I'm asking myself, what have I shared that could be deemed false news? So I click on the only other link that they share with me where they define what misinformation is. So let's look at that. So misinformation. Facebook prohibits ads that include claims debunked by third-party fact checkers, or in certain circumstances, claims debunked by organizations with particular expertise. Advertisers that repeatedly post information deemed to be false may have restrictions placed on their ability to advertise on Facebook. Find out more about fact-checking on Facebook here. Here's some examples. Ads containing claims which are debunked by third-party fact checkers. Ads which include information about vaccines as identified and verified by the global health organizations, such as the World Health Organization. And then they have the nerve to put at the bottom, was this explanation helpful? No. So Facebook essentially says that MCrider has a history of sharing misleading information that has been verified by third-party fact checkers. They won't tell me what that information is, but they're going to tell everyone who comes to my page that I'm in the habit of sharing misleading information. Again, let me emphasize that I only share the weekly videos from MCrider and an occasional meme or something on Facebook that's not controversial at all. So I'm left only to speculate what's considered misleading or controversial on MCrider, since Facebook has left me no recourse other than to speculate. Let's do that. I'm a Christian. In addition to saving lives on a motorcycle, I use MCrider on occasion to share my personal faith. I can tell you exactly how many times I've done that. I have 220 motorcycle training videos on MCrider. On 6 occasions, I've dedicated an entire video to share my faith. If you'd like to see those videos and where they're located, you can go to mcrider.com/faith, and you can draw your own conclusions whether they are misleading or harmful to the general public. In those videos, I don't put anyone else's faith or lack thereof down. I just share my own faith. That said, every person that is welcome at MCrider, regardless of their faith or lack thereof. I'm a follower of Christ, and Jesus said that the greatest commandment was to love God with all our heart and to love our neighbors as ourselves. He didn't say to love every believer as ourselves. He said to love our neighbors as ourselves. And the last time I checked, our neighbors came in every color and in every faith. I can honestly look every viewer in the eye, and I can say that I have done that in every video released on MCrider. I'm a Christian, but that doesn't mean that I look down on you regardless of what you believe. In my book, we're all God's creation, and we all deserve respect. So, am I being chastised on Facebook because I'm a Christian? I don't know. I sure wish Facebook would tell me. Well, the next thing that came to mind that we can speculate on is my approach to motorcycle training. I put a lot of emphasis on individual responsibility, and that doesn't just happen by accident. You are responsible for keeping yourself safe on two wheels. Yeah, other vehicles will impede upon us as riders. That's just a fact of life, but it is something that I have very little control over. What I do have control over are the things that keep me safer as a rider. Things like wearing proper gear, having a good following distance, riding sober, and being able to handle my motorcycle in an emergency situations. Those are things that are in my direct control, and those are things that I emphasize when I teach fellow riders. If you read between the lines, you'll also see that that's my approach to life as well. I believe in individual responsibility, and while I have compassion on those who are negatively affected by some in society, the greatest words of wisdom that I can have for anyone who feels like society is walking over them is to stand up. We live in a free country, and while we will never have equal outcomes, I do believe that we have equal opportunity in this country, or at least more than most people do in most other countries. For some, that path to success is harder than for others, because we're not all born in equal circumstances. Most of you don't know that I worked for several years as an advocate for kids who were in broken families. These families were involved in drugs. They lived in some of the poorest communities in Fort Worth, and it was tough work. I'd go into the actual homes of people who were in absolute crisis, from a financial, from a moral, and from a spiritual sense. The typical situation looked like this. I was working with a child age 8 to 18. Without exception, they did not come from a home where a mother and a father were involved in their life. I can't think of a single family that I worked with over the 8 years of doing this that had both a mom and a dad at home and involved in the kid's life. I'd say that 80% were the child of a mother aged 13 to 18 who was single and also had severe issues on their own, lots of gang and drug involvement. In most cases, they dropped this child off at grandma's house, and even the mother had little to no contact with the child, either because they chose not to or they were in jail, in prison themselves. These were families in crisis. The kids could not be controlled in the public schools. They were left in these gang-infested neighborhoods to raise themselves. The government solution was to provide free housing, free health care, food stamps, and disability checks. Now, I'm not being critical of the people here. I'm just stating the facts. But you were told as a case coordinator to not go into these neighborhoods after dark and to avoid them if possible, even during the day at the first of the month, because that's when the checks were released and the rate of intoxicated residents would be much higher. Again, I'm not passing judgment, I'm just stating facts. Some families and some kids, I would say it was the exception, were able to work their way out of these circumstances. They got temporary support from government programs, and because they had some sense of self-determination or faith to be better, themselves, they got out of this quagmire. Sometimes all it took was a fellow human being who believed in them as a person and was willing to reach down and give them that hand up. Other families believed what some in society told them, that they were no good, that they were victims, and that they were victims of a system, and unless the system gave them a handout, they never were going to have a chance. These families who listened to this stayed where they were, and they did not get better themselves. Now, I'm all for helping a neighbor to their feet, but at some point, our neighbor has to stand on their own. The worst thing you can tell another human being is that they're worthless and incapable of helping themselves. All people have value. All people are created in the image of God, and God is not helpless. I will help you to your feet, but you will never find worth in this life until you get up on your own, until you're willing to stand up and fight for what's yours. So this is my approach to life, and this is my approach to being safe on a motorcycle. There are some things that are out of our control, but I never want to put my safety in the hands of another driver. No, thank you. I'll get up on my own. Maybe some Facebook fact checker read between the lines and saw that I was teaching self-reliance and personal responsibility. In some circles, those are bad words. In some circles, those are the words of a white supremacist. So since we've mentioned that word and we've thrown it out on the table, let me make my point clear on that subject. I can't think of anything worse than looking down on another human being because of the color of their skin. As a Christian, I believe we're all created in the image of God, and every person reflects in a slightly different way the character of God. Racism is wrong, and it denies the very design of God's character and creation. We're all God's children, regardless of the color of our skin. We all have value. I think it's also wrong to throw that word around flippantly and label someone as a racist just because you disagree with them on how to help our neighbors. Too many people are saddled with that evil word today because it is used as a means to silence people that you disagree with. So we've talked about a few hot button issues here, and we're still no closer to what the actual problem is because you won't tell me what the problem is. If you want to ban me because I'm a Christian, fine, I'll take that. If you want to ban me because I believe my fellow human beings have worth and value and are capable of unimaginable heights, if we help them and then get out of their way, fine, I'll take that too because I'm not changing either one of those values. Or if you want to act like an adult and sit down and discuss what the actual problem is, I'm fine with that too. What you should not be able to do is label my words as false to my friends and viewers without telling me what the problem is. Most likely this was all a mistake and some fact checker got overzealous and canceled MCrider. Well, I'll accept your apology and move on because we need more people who are willing to forgive and forget today. If you follow MCrider and you've seen messages on Facebook stating that I'm pushing misleading information, I encourage you to think for yourself. Go to MCrider.com and look at the body of my work and judge for yourself if I've created anything of value. If you want, you can support the effort here without the hindrance of big tech by going directly to MCrider.com/member and supporting MCrider directly. Thanks for listening. Till next time, we'll see you on the road.